If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. Paul Harvey. Good day.
Dear Mr. Harvey, thank you for your vision. All I can say is I wish more had listened. Because everything you said was true. The enemy did what you said he would do. The world has been engulfed in darkness, real estate bought up and held for hostage. Owned by the wealthy, the rich, the elite, leaves little left for the small folks like me. And 4/5 of this population does wallow in sin. We've strayed so far from where we were then. And not just the lost, the broken, the haters, but the very people who call themselves believers. He's taken over our country, the churches too, but no longer with whispers, but shouts in the pews. The mantra we live by is do as we please, and half the population no longer believes. Because the Bible has become a myth, a story, no longer used for God's highest glory. For man is convinced, doesn't need God. This idea of a savior is old and it's flawed. All the things that used to be bad, things that could hurt us, were wrong or just sad, have become our favorite, most joyous things. And don't get me started on Washington. The things we've seen go on in that place, you'd be ashamed and hide your face. He's organized and ruling here in books and movies and schools, and everywhere you look, lurid, shocking, has become almost dull. We need sex and violence that are explicit and raw. Media doesn't just fan flames anymore. They set fires and encourage our wars because we are, in fact, at war. in our families, churches, nations near and far, and at war with our pills and our medicines too, and narcotics and alcohol grossly abused. We are indeed tranquilized, and not just from pills, pornography, trafficking. Our prisons are filled. We have metal detectors sniffing dogs at our schools. Children's emotions have replaced all the rules. We let kids run wild, and we run wild too, because from everywhere that counts, God has been removed. The courthouse, the schoolhouse, the houses of Congress, in our own churches, we idolize science and psychology, and there's so much abuse, and I shouldn't tell you how some church money is used. And Easter and Christmas aren't the only symbols we worship, and the young no longer think marriage is worth it. Gambling is a moneymaker for several states, and our immorality would make Lot's wife turn away. The ambitious have no incentive, and our moral compass is lost. Disease has no cure, health care our biggest cost. So you were right, and it's astounding how the devil, the enemy, is abounding, and all he did was what he was already doing for 60 years, conditioning and wooing. And we've ate the bait, fell into his trap. In this simple poem, it's too much to unpack. So I'll end this with a stern and serious warning. We better be very afraid if the devil keeps doing what he's been doing.